Well, welcome to this week's episode of Second Glance. My name is Andrew. I'm one of our associate pastors here. With me is David.
Hello.
Our youth pastor, and Zach, our pastoral resident.
Hello.
Yeah, and this Sunday was such a fun Sunday. Fun might not be the best word. Very hard to text. If you were here on Sunday, man, Pastor Matt just laid it out for us in such a real and raw way that we need. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're at a point in the book of Acts, end of chapter 4, beginning of 5, where we just get this picture of what the early church was and what they cared about and what their hearts longed for. And the text in the end of chapter 4 said that they had everything in common.
Yeah. I remember that when Matt gave us the preaching schedule, Youth Sunday was coming up and we were preaching through Acts. And I was praying, please do not give me the text that we preached.
The one about giving, right?
Yeah. The one, no, the one about dying.
Yeah. The consequences.
And when it skipped over me, I felt like it was like a new version of the Passover.
Yeah.
So
passed over. You're
passed over me. I did not have to preach through that, but Matt preached through it last week. I thought he did a great job. I think one of the things that he said that stuck out to me is that this passage feels a lot like something from the Old Testament.
Mm.
Yeah,
it is a lot like the Old Testament in that you see the judgment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And often I think we wrongly look at God as two gods. One of the old, this harsh God, and one of the new, this God of love. When the truth is we serve one God who's consistent over time. He's both in the best of both ways. And we see God's judgment poured out here on Ananias and Sapphira, but it's because God wanted their whole heart, right? And it is so hard for me to give God my whole heart, if I'm being real, right? I mean, I think we all have felt that.
Yeah. And I think, even looking at the text, when you're dealing with things like judgment, you can think of the flip side of what that means too, and that is a loving thing to do. Sometimes when judgment comes into play, God is ultimately protecting his church and his people. And it's a harsh example, but it is a very loving thing for God to do to execute his judgment.
How is it loving in this scenario?
Because it showed the people what not to do.
Yeah, I mean, they needed it was a negative example.
Yeah.
But a really needed negative example because it served the rest of the church. Even us today, it shows us that when God says something, he means it.
Yeah.
Right? Like God is serious about us giving him our everything.
Yeah.
Not just our Sunday.
Yeah. And even going back to like talking about the Old Testament, you go back and look at the life of Israel. Israel had to go through exile to realize that God truly was loving them. Mm-hmm. And to get them to bring their minds back to who he was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you guys have been in conversations with people who say something along the lines of like, I'm a fan of the God of the New Testament.
Yeah.
I don't really like the God of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
What do you say to someone like that?
Read Acts chapter 5.
Read Acts chapter 5, the first couple verses of 5.
I think it's more common than we like to admit.
Yeah.
But I think it's people who just have heard stories about who God is in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And haven't actually looked at who God is in the Old Testament.
Yeah. And even who Jesus claims to be. Because Jesus claims multiple times, I'm doing these miracles and that's great. And he shows his loving attributes, but he also says, I'm coming back to bring judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think,
it's a key characteristic of who Christ is too.
Yeah. And another key characteristic of who Christ is that Jesus is the God of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
That's the kicker. When I hear something like that, I'm like, oh, you don't understand the Trinity. Let's go through that. Jesus is the God of the Old Testament.
Yeah. But every time we see one of those instances in the Old Testament of God pouring out his judgment or wrath, there's always a reason. And I think we kind of ignore the reason most of the time to just suit whatever preconceived opinion we have on it. When the truth is, he does it different reasons depending on the circumstances, but most of the time it's for his people. It's for
Yeah.
for their purity. It's so that they would actually worship God. Sometimes it's for their protection.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
yes, there's going to be judgment if you worship other gods, because you don't know, one, it's not giving God glory, but two, it's going to wreck their lives.
Mhm.
Right.
They're going to be sacrificing their own kids here in a
Right.
minute too.
Yeah.
Just like the pagan nations around them. So
Yeah.
we can look at these things in one way and say that doesn't seem fun, doesn't
Yeah.
seem loving,
Right.
but it is the most loving thing. God is, I believe, is very consistent throughout the Bible. He doesn't change. He's the God of love and justice.
Mhm.
I think there's also like a really practical side to all of this. Like there's like the theological heady thing that we're talking about of like justice, wrath. He's a God of wrath inside, and he's still that same God inside the first couple verses of chapter 5.
Mhm.
But I think there's something really practical in that, God is creating this church, this movement, and he wants to start it off on the right foot,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I remember when I used to be a public school teacher, like the first couple weeks were instrumental in having a good rest of the year.
Yeah.
Because if I am letting bad behavior slide in the first couple weeks, then by the time we get to May, it's an insane asylum,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But if I'm starting off on the right foot, I'm disciplining in the correct way, then that sets me up for success for the following year. I think the same is happening here, that a little leaven leavens the whole lump with the church.
Mhm.
That if we need to deal with this like quickly, efficiently, like Peter's like, you're dead, dead. It's like the moment the words leave his mouth, they're
Yeah,
dying.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I think that's setting for the rest of Acts, it sets itself up
Right.
for success.
Yeah.
But it's a wake up call for them and for us today, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right,
the reality
right,
is God's word is for them, but it's for us too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you guys, for me, what are some of those things that maybe we need to do to give God our everything?
Yeah.
Right? For Ananias and Sapphira, it was one, they lied to
Right,
God.
right,
Mhm.
right.
Don't do that. But two, they also were under the assumption of they're supposed to give. They were kind of lying to people what they were
Right,
giving. So it was
right.
an issue of giving, an issue of lying. But for us, what are some of those things that maybe we need to give more fully to God?
Yeah. Yeah. Just going through this text, my mind immediately went to how am I as a father pouring into my household? Because this is something that's coerced by the family, to where if my wife were to come up to me and say, hey, I feel led to do this. Okay, let's do that. Whereas these guys are like, hey, we should, they talked with each other and said, all these people are giving everything that they have. We should hold back. And that's not leading your household well when
Yeah.
the father of the household is like, yeah, okay.
And then you justify, like, we could use that for something else.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's so good.
That's where my mind went when,
Yeah, I like how you put that. Like it's the church is made up of these molecular level families.
Uh-huh.
And it really does start with the family, not necessarily like, okay, we as the church body need to be in this together. Like that directive really starts at
Yeah.
what are husbands and wives
Yeah.
doing? And if we can get that on track, then the church body
Yeah.
will be healthy.
yeah.
Rather than, it's kind of like a grassroots level health of the church
Yeah.
rather than like a top down, here's what it needs to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good.
But it starts with us giving God our everything.
Right.
And oftentimes we can think of all the ways
Yeah.
we do it well
Yeah.
because we don't want to think of the ways we need to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes, like for me, it's doing the good things for the right reasons. Doing it because I love the Lord,
Yeah.
not because
Yeah.
I have to or not because of
Yeah.
X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Trying to serve my wife, and
Yeah.
my family, because I get to is to glorify the Lord. So all of those different things, I would encourage you and challenge you to think through what this means for you. When you read this story of Ananias and Sapphira and this judgment, it's wild. But what is God calling you to? What is He calling you to give to Him? What part of your heart do we need to open up to Him? So I would encourage you to take some time and think through that, pray through that. But thank you so much for tuning in and joining us for this week's episode of Second Glance.
See you guys.